Yep, pressing live. Good morning, everyone. People often dream of the amazing tenant, the dream tenant that they can secure in their property. They often love a national and international tenant that they can put in their property so they don't have to stress any longer. How do you get a great tenant like we just did with Taco Bell? What are the tricks to the trade? Stay tuned.
Good morning, Mr. Novak. How are we?
Good, Nath. You?
Is this 610? This is episode 610.
610. 610.
Coming a long way. How you going?
Not 20, not 100, not 200, 610.
That's it. Now, the big topic this morning that we're covering is securing a tenant like Taco Bell. What's the primary question we're going to dive into that is what's the jargon or what's the language that these fantastic tenants that we come across, what is it that they're looking for when it comes to a property for their business?
Well, every landlord would dream it, wouldn't they? So I guess if you own a box, a commercial property, you want a tenant that's not going to waver on paying rent. You want a tenant that's going to look after the place. You want a tenant that's not going to be moving in and out all the time. And often these big guys, your national tenants and your international tenants, you're just home free for 20, 30 years.
Absolutely. And that really excites a landlord, excites an owner when they can secure themselves someone long term, and that's got a lot of credit behind them. They've got that reputation behind them, like Taco Bell. And I think what we're going to look into this morning, and like I want to throw at you, Mark, is the jargon or some of the things that these tenants look for. And correct me if I'm wrong, one of them, grease trap. Am I right? And let's look into what that is.
Yeah, so good morning, Jeff. Good morning, Luke. Yeah, so look, I think, what a lot of people don't underestimate is when, particularly if they're first-time investors, is if you've got basically food does a lot of commercial. So what I mean is your mum and dad investors, they're not attracted to city blocks, to city buildings, to a whole entire floor in the city. They're more entire. They just really want like a little box that's maybe $500,000 or $1 million that they can invest in their super, or they can loan money on and buy. You know what I mean? Most mum and dad investors are not sort of mid or large scale. They're just little fellas, and they don't really know when they're buying what the things are to look after. But certainly when you're looking at attractive, a great tenant, and let me frame this up, we've just put Taco Bell into DY. This was a box. It was purchased for, when I say box, it's street level, concrete shell, cold shell, so it needed aircon, needed power upgrading, needed a lot of stuff done to it. Purchased for about 1.3 sort of $1 million. And when the owner bought it, it would have been quite ballsy, not knowing who's going to go in there. But what the owner did know is he had a good zoning. He was on a major bus stop of the Northern Beaches, being DYB line bus. He knew he had the approval for an exhaust fan and grease trap.
Mm-hmm.
So that on purchasing, he was positioning himself really well for a national tenant, because he knew that all these traits, when he was buying the property, could jag that major tenant.
Definitely. And I think that's that's the advantage when you look at when you're purchasing a commercial property or leasing out a commercial property. You want to make sure that it's in a spot that you can feel comfortable in, you can feel proud of, and definitely, I mean, it's like you said, it was a cold shell, but it's prime location off Pittwater Road. Being in the centre or the heart of DY, right across from a bus stop. I mean, it's absolutely incredible the opportunity, and I think these both national and international tenants saw that opportunity despite it being in the state that it was and thought, hey, you know what, let's give it a crack here. And so therefore looking into the jargon or the things that these guys look for, even though it's cold shell, is definitely something like a grease trap, which you'd need obviously for a food premises. Such a big deal when you're frying things, cooking things on a daily basis. It's such a big thing. And you mentioned as well, it was the exhaust fan. That's another thing, and that can be quite tricky, I think, when the property in itself is situated where there's residential properties up top. This can sometimes really conflict with the living circumstances, the smell, that they become little things that people think about become a little bit of an issue. But in this case, it worked out really well. But look, exploring that a little bit more, what are some other things that these guys look for in a property? We mentioned grease trap, we mentioned exhaust. What's some other things, Mark?
Their customer movements, even physically, how the customer would move in and out of the property is a major concern for these guys. So, for instance, when we were leasing this shop out, we were really aware that it was a PM traffic shop. When you're on 6 lanes of traffic, and when you've got a bus lane that basically eliminates cars from stopping, you've got to be really, really conscious about where your customer's going to park, how your customer's going to move around your property to come into your shop. So we were really aware that it was never going to be a coffee franchise that was going to go in there, because that's AM traffic. So that would have been better suited to the other side of the main road, where people in the morning are up to 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock are heavily drinking coffee. Mm-hmm. Whereas someone like Taco Bell, they're very aware what their customers doing also in terms of not only their movement patterns but their eating patterns, and they're not going to be having Taco Bell for breakfast. So being a PM side of the road is actually a better side of the road for your lunches and for your dinners. And even more so, when you get off the bus, you actually almost walk straight into the front door of Taco Bell.
Yeah, that was such a key thing I think that they looked at, was making sure that their primary focus was driving clients, driving people to their property, and they couldn't have nailed it any more than they did. So I think that we've covered the grease trap, we've covered exhaust, we've even looked now at the customer, drawing in people to the business. Looking at the two elements that we discussed just previously, I think, and again, it's about correcting me if I'm wrong, it's looking at the load that's required to actually operate in the business. I mean, having these things like an exhaust fan, you need a certain load, a certain phase. Is that right?
Yeah, so look, another one as well, believe it or not, some retailers need their own, it's almost like a power kiosk to the building. They draw so much load and so much current on the way they prepare their food or their refrigeration and equipment and stuff like that it actually can stress the entire building. So we've locally been appointed to sell. We've been appointed recently to sell an IGA, and that when that IGA was going in, the amount of cool rooms and refrigeration that goes into a grocery store is just out of control. So if you're a building if you want to have a great tenant, you've got to have that preparation. Even if you're not going to physically have it done, you've actually made way for that to come into your building somehow. So to give you an example, with Taco Bell, their exhaust fans are going to be heavy load. Their cool room's going to be heavy load. Their reheating, their microwaves and stuff is going to be heavy load equipment. So that's also got to come in from the street. Often you'll need an Energy Australia upgrade, for your power. But that's another consideration. Not particularly having it, but being able to get it sometimes is just impossible. So if you can make provisions for that, or when you buy, you can keep an eye out for how that can be. Those, where can you get the grease trap? Where can you get the exhaust fan? Can you pull in from the street power? Those, if you need, or has it got all those things already? They're major things.
Definitely. And I think, going back to even the root of it all, the start of it all, I think that these guys, apart from wanting or knowing that they require these certain things for the business to operate, the zoning is such a crucial thing, because if you're looking for a property and the zoning isn't just right, it really then starts to become a sticky and prickly situation where you don't even want to dive too deep into it, because you're just like, well, what's the point? I'll just look elsewhere. But having that zoning that really works for you in that spot really then helps your business. It really helps to explore other avenues besides just the basics. But the real good one you mentioned is that, this side of the street there, wouldn't benefit from a cafe. It would benefit more from something like this, where it's stop and go. It doesn't really need to impact more so in the morning, but drives throughout that lunch and later evening period, where we know definitely that the bus, for instance, here in DY, that side of the street there, come 3 o'clock, for a good couple of hours there, you're restricted by up until 3 o'clock. Sorry, you've got the bus that conflicts there, but it's worked out really well for them, and I think we're really excited to see that absolutely blow up in DY. Do you think that there's anything?
It's going to be amazing. It's going to get great. Look, even school kids, when you look at school kids getting off the bus to grab some fries or to grab a shake or something, that's a roaring trade. When you empty out a busload of school kids, that's a roaring trade, every single bus. I want to say a special g'day to Luke Moroney, buyer's agent. How are you, legend? Jonathan Creek. I've never thought about this before, but it's genius. So good morning, Jonathan, the storyteller, media extraordinaire. Privilege that he's watching. So with this morning, evening traffic, the intro of McCafe increases the value of a Macca's site on the morning side of the road. Yeah, look, what they call that sweating an asset. So if you can sweat the asset, so for instance, if you're using a premises for half of the business hours, 9 to 5, and then you can actually sweat the asset another 8 hours, or sweat the asset another 8 hours, so you're running 24 hours a day, you're actually, if you think about it, your rent's not changing. You're sweating the asset, but your rent's not changing. So when you consider McDonald's going to a McCafe model, they're really sweating the asset that the rest of the lows through the day actually get filled by coffee, because they did burgers, which was night and lunch, dinner and lunch. Then they said, we want to sweat the asset further, and then they went into brekkies. Then they noticed they're having other lows, through those 24 hours. They were trying to fill the lows, so then they filled them with coffees and cakes. It's very clever. And these guys, they analyse their business when they're choosing a location like you would not believe. If cars can't turn right here, we will not take it. If cars, just a hook in a road, they won't take it for that reason, because what they do love is to get both sides of the traffic, particularly with drive-throughs. And the way they treat drive-throughs is almost like a religion. They chase them hard. We're doing another national tenant in Brookvale at the moment, and the efforts they've gone to for drive-through, wow.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, again, that would probably be the last point, noticing the drive-through element is such a big thing, especially for these national tenants, and even looking to international tenants, that, if you've got that there, it's extremely advantageous, and you peak at the highs and the lows throughout that day, throughout that 24-hour period. So we're excited. I think all of you should be as pumped as us. Mark, have we missed anything? What do we got?
Nah, man, thank you. Look, DY's, you know what? I think I do have to say something. There are people that aren't unhappy about businesses like this going in, but I do have to say people vote with their money. And I can understand the opposition sometimes with, bars or restaurants going into premises. But I think if the community is going to support them with patronage and with orders and with buying their product, I think there's a necessity on there for the community, particularly if it's not hurting the community like something like gambling. But food, no, I think I think DY is a winner, and I think DY people are going to vote with their money with Taco Bell and support that business. Time will tell, but I think if you see how all the other businesses that have just opened up in DY, like Guzman Gomez, Fishbowl, and these guys, they've just had a roaring trade.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's I think that's a wrap, is it not?
That's a wrap. That's a wrap. Everyone, if you got any questions, let us know. It's a live show, and you can flick through. And also, a lot of the stuff that we talk about are questions that people have posed and asked us to talk about as well. So, if there is a topic that you guys want to know about, always feel free to send us a direct message, and we can cover it.
Brilliant. Mark,
Nate, thanks, bud.
Keeping the goods. Thank you so much. Have a lovely morning.
You're a legend. See you, man. Bye.